Hello, everybody. On January 20th, President Trump signed a host of executive orders with direct implications on the U.S. immigration system. Now, in recent days, one of the executive orders that has been making a lot of noise and has consumed a lot of the attention of the masses has been the executive order targeting birthright citizenship. And it seems that not a lot of attention is being placed on another one of the executive orders, which I think has massive implications to the immigration system. And that executive order, it's called Protecting the United States from Foreign Terrorists and Other National Security and Public Safety Threats. And like I said, it doesn't seem like this executive order is getting the attention that it deserves when considering the potential implications that it has for people that are seeking immigration benefits to the United States or that already have immigration benefits to the United States. I'd like to read through it, and as I read through it, I'd like to just share some insights with you, and hopefully you'll gain some values. So at the top section, section 1, it starts off with the policy and the purpose. And it says that it is the policy of the United States to protect its citizens from aliens who intend to commit terrorist attacks, threaten our national security, espouse hateful ideology, or otherwise exploit the immigration laws for malevolent purposes. To protect Americans, the United States must be vigilant during the visa issuance process to ensure that those aliens approved for admission into the United States do not intend to harm Americans or other national interests. More importantly, the United States must identify them before their admission or entry into the United States. And the United States must ensure that admitted aliens and aliens otherwise already present in the United States do not bear hostile attitudes towards its citizens, culture, government institutions, or founding principles, and do not advocate for aid or support institutions or founding principles, and do not advocate for aid or support designated foreign terrorists and other threats to our national security. Okay, so that's just an intro to where the policy interests behind this executive order. And then it goes into the actual measures that it calls for. And that starts with section 2. Essentially, it calls for enhanced vetting and screening across agencies. So it starts with the Secretary of State in coordination with the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence shall promptly identify all resources that may be used to ensure that all aliens seeking admission to the United States or who are already in the United States are vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. Determine the information needed from any country to adjudicate any visa, admission, or other benefit under the INA for one of its nationals, and to ascertain whether the individual seeking the benefit is who the individual claims to be, and that the individual is not a security or public safety threat. Reestablish a uniform baseline for screening and vetting standards and procedures consistent with the uniform baseline that existed on January 19th, 2021, that will be used for any alien seeking a visa or immigration benefit of any kind, and vet and screen to the maximum degree possible all aliens who intend to be admitted, enter, or are already inside the United States, particularly those aliens coming from regions or nations with identified security risks. So right off the bat, this first section is talking about screening procedures to the maximum degree possible. Now, just giving you my impressions here, something that is quite interesting is that as it stands, when somebody goes in and applies for a visa, there's multiple possible outcomes. That individual could be approved for the visa, they could be denied for that visa, or they could be placed into administrative processing. And administrative processing is basically this state of limbo where following an individual's visa appointment and their visa interview, the consulate will essentially let them know that their visa was refused pending mandatory administrative processing. And during this period, essentially, while no explicit reason is given for the refusal, in many instances, there are various security checks that need to take place. And this goes on in some instances quite commonly, particularly for people from certain regions, particularly for people that are coming seeking visas from the Middle East. We oftentimes see this for Iranian individuals that have served in the Iranian military, or for other people from various Middle Eastern countries, particularly those that have undergone mandatory military service in that country, and in other instances as well. We've seen these instances of mandatory administrative processing. And the problem with administrative processing is that the individual's case is essentially, like I said, in limbo without any definitive timeline by which this security check or whatever it is that the consulate needs to complete. There's no definitive timeline of how long it can take. So it can take a matter of days, weeks, oftentimes months, without any clear timeline. And this can be, of course, understandably very devastating and frustrating and nerve-wracking for somebody that is seeking a visa to come to the United States. So what I'm thinking right off the bat is that it seems that this executive order is potentially going to even result in more instances of administrative processing and potentially more immigration delays for those that are seeking visas as a result of these enhanced security measures. I think based on this executive order, we're likely to see greater instances of administrative processing and potentially even longer wait times when cases are selected for administrative processing to ensure that the security screenings are being done to the maximum extent possible, as indicated in the executive order. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing that I found interesting just off of the initial portion that I've read is that this is not just applying to people that are affirmatively now seeking visas. It's also talking about people that have already received visas. So we'll get more into that as well as we read through this, but we'll jump right into the next section. So Part B says, within 60 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Director of National Intelligence shall jointly submit to the President, through the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security, a report identifying countries throughout the world for which vetting and screening information is so deficient as to warrant a partial or full suspension on the admission of nationals from those countries pursuant to Section 212F of the INA, and identifying how many nationals from those countries have entered or have been admitted into the United States on or since January 20th, 2021, and any other information the secretaries and attorney general deem relevant to the actions or activities of such nationals since their admission or entry to the United States. And then in Part C, it says, whenever information is identified that would support the exclusion or removal of any alien described in subsection 2B, the section that we just read, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall take immediate steps to exclude or remove that alien unless she determines that doing so would inhibit a significant pending investigation or prosecution of the alien for a serious criminal offense or would be contrary to the national security interests of the United States. So here now, what's very important to identify here, again, it says within 60 days of the date of this order, there's essentially going to be a process of identifying certain countries where the information available from those countries is so deficient that the United States can't do a proper screening of the individuals that are coming from that country. And it seems that through this executive order, there's a foreshadowing of certain countries that are going to have either a partial or a full suspension for people from those countries gaining access to the United States and getting visas. So basically, many will recall that during the first term of President Trump, there was an immigration ban from certain countries and certain Muslim majority countries. And many people were wondering whether a similar ban would be instituted in the second term of President Trump. And many were wondering if this would be included among the batch of executive orders that was signed on day one. Now, as of right now, there is no ban similar to the ban that was in place during President Trump's first term, but it seems that this executive order is the pretext to ban the issuance of visas to individuals of certain countries. Again, this section of the executive order says that within 60 days of the date of this order, there is a report to be submitted to the president identifying countries throughout the world for which vetting is so deficient so as to warrant a partial or full suspension of admission of nationals from those countries. So that is essentially kind of defining what a potential immigration ban would look like for certain countries. Now, taking it a step further, another subsection that I just read here is asking to identify how many nationals from those countries have entered the United States since the start of President Biden's administration. And then it goes on in subsection C to talk about potentially removing these individuals. So this executive order has such profound immigration implications because it's not only calling for potentially halting future immigration from certain countries, but it's also calling to potentially identify people that have already been issued visas from certain countries where vetting may be challenging for the United States, and potentially revoking those visas and removing these individuals from the United States. Very significant implications here. Now, this is a long executive order and there's a lot of material here, and I don't want to bore you too much, but I do want to just highlight a couple of additional points and then we'll conclude. So in section 3 of the executive order, it's talking about additional measures to protect the nation, and subsection A of section 3 talks about evaluating and adjusting all existing regulations, policies, procedures, and provisions of the Foreign Service Manual or guidance of any kind pertaining to each of the grounds of inadmissibility listed in sections 212A2-3 of the INA to ensure the continued safety and security of the American people and our constitutional republic. It goes on to talk about putting certain safeguards in place for certain refugees or stateless individuals from being admitted to the United States. In subsection C, it talks about evaluating all visa programs to ensure that they are not used by foreign nation states or other hostile actors to harm the security, economic, political, cultural, or other national interests of the United States. And several other subsections touch upon similar themes. And then we'll just go down to subsection F here, which says evaluate the adequacy of programs designed to ensure the proper assimilation of lawful immigrants into the United States, and recommend any additional measures to be taken that promote a unified American identity and attachment to the Constitution, laws, and founding principles of the United States. So, and then again, recommend any additional actions to protect the American people and our constitutional republic from foreign threats. So, and it continues, but in the interest of brevity, I just wanted to highlight here that this executive order has broad sweeping implications for people seeking immigration benefits to the United States. There's a lot of broad statements here to assess various immigration protocols and policies regarding vetting, people seeking visas, and so on. And it's going to be very interesting to see which countries are included in this list of countries that is going to come out, where the information available is not to the level which would allow the United States to do sufficient vetting of people seeking visas from those countries and seeking immigration benefits from those countries. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the coming days, weeks, and months have in store for us in terms of the practical and the actual results of this executive order in terms of immigration policy and immigration law and any bans that come as a result of this. And that's going to be something that we're going to closely monitor. So I know I read quite a bit here, and we're just assessing this in real time, and we're going to continue to monitor to see what developments unfold here. But I just wanted to share with you some initial thoughts. And one more thing that just as I read through this executive order that I think about is, again, as we can see that the executive order continues to echo this sentiment towards very stringent vetting for security reasons. What I'm wondering as an immigration attorney is if this increased vetting for security purposes is going to extend into a harsher scrutiny for the underlying requirements of a particular visa that don't bear any implications on security threats. For example, let's say we're talking about an O1 visa, which requires a showing of extraordinary ability in a particular field. What I wonder is, will this executive order, as it mentions increased vetting to the maximum extent possible for security reasons, is there any possibility the standards to meet an O1 visa, to meet a showing of extraordinary ability, will be scrutinized more heavily as a result of how someone could read this executive order? Or similarly, let's say in the context of an investor visa, like an E2 visa that requires a substantial investment. It's a visa that requires a substantial investment for somebody to operate and direct and develop their business in the United States. Something that I wonder is, would this executive order call for increased scrutiny into the underlying requirements for that visa? My inclination is to say that, just if I'm thinking out loud, I'm hopeful that the increased scrutiny will truly be limited to security, to assess a case increase from a security standpoint, and scrutiny will not increase to harsher standards for meeting the baseline requirements for a particular visa. But of course, time will tell. So that's just me sharing some thoughts out loud. I hope you found this video beneficial. If you know anybody that can benefit from this video, feel free to share with them. Thank you so much for tuning in. And like I said, we're going to be closely monitoring for these developments. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you like this video, please feel free to smash that thumbs up button. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe so that you're in the loop with all the videos that we're posting. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next video.